Welcome to Berean TV. I was just sent a video a little earlier. I'm trying to go through it again, SaNeter, and talking about the Bible, the book of poison, Dr. Reggie and Unc going after a street preacher. Y'all can check that out. It's called The Street Preacher, and the poison book goes after Unc and Dr. Reggie. Like I said, it was a pastor. They probably seen somebody out evangelizing in the street, and this guy, you know, they said SaNeter and them guys ran up on him. Now, I've shared with y'all before that SaNeter is what I was considered the Don King of the conscious community. I don't look at SaNeter as a scholar. I'm not sure if he have any degree in any specific area, any specific field, but Dr. Reggie Unc and Dr. Reggie, they're supposed to be going in asking this unlearned preacher a bunch of stuff. And the truth of the matter is, as a conscious Christian, and I deal with conscious Christians, and I spoke about conscious Christians in other videos. Nat Turner was a conscious Christian, Harriet Tubman, and Medgar Evers, and so many other people. Not Medgar Evers, I'm sorry. Marcus Garvey and so many others, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, were all conscious believers. Marcus Garvey left the Catholic Church and started dealing with the African church. But there are a lot of uneducated people in the church, a lot of uneducated evangelists, and there's certain scriptures they would use throughout Bible to make it sound like they don't need an education or they don't understand certain things. But a brother sent me this video, and he asked me to do a reply if I felt led to do it. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share some things about that. But before I get into it, I want to talk about the conscious community as a whole. We have people that, like Shaka Utmost and Polite and Dr. Ali Muhammad, people that's part of the conscious community, Dr. Smalls, that's part of the conscious community, but then yet they don't claim any one spiritual affiliation, or they would claim chematology, or they would claim the doctrines of Kemet, but what they don't share with you is that the Egyptians were extremely religious people. They were extremely what some anthropologists would call superstitious people, and there's a lot of people these days like Shaka Utmost and so many others, and I'm gonna name some names, and they're coming to y'all, and they're secular Egyptologists. I won't even call them Egyptologists in the sense that they study like Egyptologists study, but they want to bring out certain things about ancient Egypt, or Kemet. Kemet is the word that we called it back in the days of Kebuland, or whatever, the land of Cush, 105th Psalms, people would call that. And these people would attempt to give you a secularized version of the Egyptian religion. But because of the coffin text, pyramid text, and the book of the coming forth by day, the Egyptians, everything that they did in life, they did it and they planned for the afterlife, because they believed in a transition. Later on in the same video, around 18 minutes in the same video, another sister that was talking in the background said that she was born to die. And that's not the original Kemetic doctrine. That's not the original biblical doctrine. That's not original spirituality. That's how come when you look at other stories, we can even find that people the world over has been searching for the fountain of youth. If we go with the story in the book of Genesis and Adam and Eve, they weren't meant to die. Jesus said, because I live, you shall live also. So immortality is what we've all been dealing with all from the mystery religions to ancient Babylonians and the ancient Hebrews. Immortality, or what can develop or what can keep your soul or develop your soul and take you to the ancestors, to another place. We say Dr. Ben is dead, Dr. John Henry Clark is dead, Malcolm X, Dr. King is dead. They went on to another place. They have made their transition, and that has always been the doctrine. But we have a group of brothers now from Harlem. We got some cats SaNeter and some brothers from Harlem. They do what they do, but they're not giving you the fullness of the Egyptian doctrine. Let's lay that out first. They're not giving you the fullness of the doctrine, how the Egyptians were extremely spiritual people. They wanted everything to do to go into the afterlife. They wanted to go a lot of pharaohs. They wanted to go with their servants. They wanted to go with their animals. They wanted to go with their pottery. And the Egyptian Book of the Dead are rituals or magical spells that when they go through the underworld, they can pass what Christians would call demons in the underworld, and they can go to the chair or to the seat of Osiris, and they can be judged according to their deeds, and their hearts can be weighed out. And that's what it's basically all about. But a lot of preachers aren't educated. A lot of preachers aren't educated, or they're educated in various things, but not so much in the Kemetic doctrine. They're not educated in various things that's dealing with Freemasonry, the New World Order. They just know the Bible, and they know that Jesus saves, and that's good. But for my conscious Christians that's watching, we have Sunday Seminary, and we're dealing with certain things because we know that the average person in the street's not listening to your pastor. The average person in the street's not listening to your bishop. Now, when I say I'm a Christian and I'm a conscious Christian, there's certain things that I have to explain. When I say I'm a conscious Christian, or like the brother that sent me this video and other people that's involved with us in Sunday Seminary, we know our history, we understand where we come from, but at the same time, we understand that a religion is a tool that has been used. Now, there's certain things that the Most High God has never called his chosen people to do. Even when we go back in the book of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, which we call the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, which we ascribe to the prophet Moses, that came out of Egypt, that Acts 7:22 says he was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. Even when we go back to that, when the Most High God that we follow as Israelites or as the church and as his chosen nation or his chosen people, from the very beginning, he's called the people out of paganism. Abraham came out of paganism. Everybody in the Fertile Crescent, everybody in Egypt, if you go back to Ireland, all over Europe, everybody has always had an image of their God or some type of deity, because to the low, weak-minded person, you need an image of deity to understand who deity is. But the high God, the Most High God that we speak about as Christians or as true, authentic Israelites, the Most High God commanded his people, don't have no graven images. So that's the reason that a lot of people war against the European image of Jesus. And when I start talking about the European image of Jesus, this is a tool that the Nation of Islam has used to evangelize and pull people out the church. The More Science Temple, the 5%ers, and Clarence 13X in the 70s. But I see the argument coming back, and it's prevalent on the internet with Dr. Omar Johnson and SETI, and it's prevalent with other people that's on SaNeter TV or that's down with the House of Consciousness, because they're constantly talking about a European image of Jesus. But as a conscious Christian, I follow what's known as the primitive church, or primitive Christianity, what went on in the very beginning. Christians and Israelites were the same people. When they split, none of them never had images for the first 300 years. None of them never wore a cross for the first 300 years. None of them never had a Christmas tree for the first 300 years. So I follow what's known as primitive Christianity, and many conscious Christians do. But because of the image of the white Jesus and how so many people, because imagery is so important, we've seen the Nation of Islam speak against it in the 60s, but I'm seeing a resurgence of this on SaNeter TV. But to be honest, any Christian, SaNeter, I don't know, last time you've been in a church. Dr. Omar Johnson, you speak in a church here and there, mostly AME or Baptist churches who pastors are conscious, or they're Prince Hall Freemasons, and they'll invite you in to preach. But look around. When was the last time, honestly, and I've been in the church, and I left the church, and I used to pastor a church back in the days. When was the last time y'all walked into a church up here in Florida and the A and Virginia and New York and New Hampshire and saw a white image of a white Jesus outside of a Catholic church? We'll deal with the Catholics and some videos later on. But outside of that, when was the last time y'all saw an image dealing with that? Let me go to the video, though. I don't want to pull up the video, because if I play the video, I'm not sure with this copyright thing, and I don't want SaNeter and them to shut me down. And you know, I have 100 and something videos online. I just don't want any problems with that, and I'm not sure the copyright thing. But I told y'all what the name of the video was. It was The Street Preacher and the Poison Book goes after Unc and Dr. Reggie. And some interesting things were said around 250 in the video. We see Unc, and Unc is starting to talk about, we know that the white man brought the Bible into Africa. This is something that I hear all over the internet. But Unc, I know you reading J.A. Rogers. I know you got Dr. Ben. I know you got Chancellor Williams. J.A. Rogers told y'all, like I tell my Sunday seminary people, like I've made in previous videos, 100 amazing facts about the Negro. Christianity, the first Christian nation on the face of the earth before there was a pope, was in Ethiopia. If you read the Bible, Acts the 8th chapter, we see the original man coming, and he's reading the book of the prophet Isaiah, and the Bible specifically says that he was coming from Jerusalem worshiping. He's an African man that's in a chariot, and he's reading Holy Writ. We've had Holy Writ. Y'all have argued, and Dr. Ray, y'all have argued that a lot of the priests, a lot of the things that's in the Bible, like the negative confessions, thou shalt not kill, certain commandments came down, and certain proverbs were already in Africa. So how can you say that the white man brought the Bible to Africa when the majority of the Bible was written on the continent of Africa? I'm going to take my time. I don't want to go too fast in this video. I don't know how much time I got, but I'm just going to bring out a few things. And the preacher said some interesting stuff later on in the video about how the Bible comes from God. I'm going to tell y'all right now, the Bible don't come from God. When we start talking about the Bible and Christians getting confused saying the Bible comes from God, there's only a small portion of scripture that we start dealing with the commandments that say that the Lord wrote that down with his hands. God inspired man to write the Bible. Abraham didn't have a Bible. Did they have holy things that they followed from holy Israelite prophets, certain writings? And as time went on and more prophets came and spoke to God's chosen people, not Egypt and everybody else. Some people, when God's chosen people left ancient Kemet, some Egyptians came with them. They wanted to be freed also, and they started following the laws, the statutes, and commandments. But the holy prophets, they wrote as they were moved by the spirit of the Ruach of the Most High God. And this is how the Bible came to be developed. So any preacher out there, any Christian out there, when y'all start saying God wrote the Bible, that's sounding a little bit crazy, because God did not write the Bible, and the Bible never tells you that God wrote the Bible. But Brother Reggie, I'm going to bring up some other stuff. Brother Reggie, I think this is around 6:10 in the video. Brother Reggie started talking about Abraham, how Abraham was in Egypt, and he said, well, how can the story of Genesis, how can that be written in the Greek language if that was, Hebrew? I guess he's a little confused about that. But we have what's known as the Septuagint. 250 years before the Messiah came on the scene, one of the leading institutions was the library that was in Alexandria. And in 250, after Alexander the Great made the Greek language the lingua franca, like the Europeans came over here and forced the Indians and started talking their own language, Alexander the Great did the same thing. With conquest all over the world, this is just what happens. And that became the lingua franca. There were a lot of original Israelites that did not know how to speak their language anymore. Some were speaking Aramaic, but a lot of people started speaking what's known as the Greek language, and that was the lingua franca. That was just the popular language of the time. There were Egyptians that spoke Greek. This is the importance of the Rosetta Stone that came later on with Champollion and interpreting what happened in the whole birth of Egyptology. So I just wanted to bring that up. You're supposed to know better than that. But when you start talking to Christians and they're not conscious or they don't know their history, y'all can spew a lot of things. Let me just go through a couple of points, some other things that came out. Reggie said, how can Moses only speak Egyptian? We're not sure. We're not sure if Moses only spoke Egyptian. He was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. And the Egyptians were people of trade. So there's a good chance that the Pharaoh and other people had interpreters, and there were other priests that were linguists that understood Nubian and different tongues, because the Egyptian language wasn't the only tongue on the entire continent. So when we start dealing with conscious people, to the Christian that is conscious, you have to watch the slick things that conscious people say that are not Christians. And there's a lot of people that's believers, and we watching you, SaNeter, a lot of preachers watching you, but there's questions that do come up that the average pastor, the average bishop can't answer. But this is why they have conscious other people that, and we're here to give an answer. And we're not, and I don't want people to feel, because some people feel, oh, well, you're a Christian, you're not supposed to approach them, you're not supposed to make videos and stuff. That's all foolishness there in the